Hey guys, it's Krusk, well-acclaimed YouTube gunsmith. Alright, this is my first video, and I wanted to do my first video right by responding to a YouTuber nobody knows. I'm going to be making a video response to why the AR-15 will get you killed by rational preps. It is a video arguing that the AR-15 is a bad rifle for civilian use. I, upon viewing this video, was surprised by somebody thinking that these were well-reasoned and rational points, but I don't want to poison the well and get into the arguments ahead of time. What I do want to say before we get into it is the video will be linked in the description. I want you, the viewer, to keep me honest, alright? Watch that video before or after, whatever, and tell me, did I take this guy out of context? Did I misrepresent his point? Did I misunderstand something he said? I want to know. I want to get good at this YouTube thing, and I think being fair and reasonable is a good way of doing it. So keep me honest. And if I didn't misrepresent him and I didn't strawman him at all, then give me a like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. All that thing YouTubers are legally obligated to say. Now that's all out of the way. Let's get into the video.
American civilians love the AR-15. No wonder, it looks like the M16, the primary weapon of US soldiers for half a century. But misplaced confidence in this civilian gimmick gun can get you killed. You see, millions of folks did not buy this rifle because it is the best tool for their needs. No, they purchased their ARs because they fantasize about being soldiers themselves.
So that's the essential premise of the video, that if you're not in the military, the AR-15 can only be used as LARPing as a military man. That is the premise of the video, as I understand it. He calls it being a soldier wannabe multiple times in the video, which I find a little disrespectful. I don't like the phrasing of it. However, I will say that he stated his point very clearly, and I think most people can understand what he means. Now, do I agree with this? No. There are tons of reasons why someone would want a AR-15 rifle other than wanting to LARP as a military man. We're going to talk about some of those when he actually starts making his arguments, but I fundamentally disagree with his premise that the two uses of AR-15 are LARPing and being a military person. I fundamentally disagree with that premise. Also, he said that people like the AR-15 because it looks like the M16, the military rifle of the United States government. That's not entirely correct. The M16 is a variant of the AR-15 platform developed by Eugene Stoner and the Armalite Company in the mid-60s. So the M16 looks like the AR-15, not the other way around.
For the soldier wannabe, the AR-15 is the perfect costume prop. It even shoots real army bullets. This video exposes the truth about the AR-15 and reveals the telltale clues of the soldier wannabe. To find out if you're a wannabe, keep score as you watch.
Oh, that's something else that's worth mentioning about this video. He keeps a really pedantic and degrading theme through the video that if you have an AR-15 but you don't meet certain criteria laid down by him, you're a wannabe, or most people will call them a LARPer, right? You're pretending to be something you're not. You are trying to be something you're not qualified to be. I find this really derogatory and strange. I don't quite understand why this is in a video. That's just not maybe the best way of reaching out to the prepping community, I can only assume, who probably have a storage of, surplus military gear and surplus equipment that they've been storing up because it's affordable, reliable, effective as far as their needs go. I think saying if you're using military equipment but you're not military, you're a LARPer is a good way of getting ostracized from the prepping community. I'm not a member of the prepping community, so I don't really know. I'm just kind of speculating here. But he hasn't posted any new videos after this one in over 2 years. So I'm going to say maybe he offended some members of the prepping community. I don't think this video turned out too well for him. But that should not impact your opinion of his arguments. Just something worth pointing out, that this whole wannabe LARPer test thing he's doing is not necessarily the best way of arguing to people that their rifle sucks.
There are 5 main categories where soldier wannabes reveal themselves. But before all that, here's your first wannabe clue. If you have ever posed in the bathroom mirror with your AR-15, there's a good chance you're a soldier wannabe.
Alright, so this one's a little innocuous. Posing with your rifle is bad. Okay, I find those posts mostly annoying too, unless somebody's posting like range results and like how far the training's taken them and stuff. That's different. That's like watching a boxing video versus watching somebody flex at the gym. It's kind of two different things, but that's not important. What I would say is, while these people are maybe being not the most professional, taking a photo of you posing with your weapon in your bathroom or wherever it's convenient for you to take a selfie with your weapon is not anything too harmful. And I'd say that, saying, oh, you're a wannabe because you showed off your $2,000 gun to your Instagram followers, that's some boomer shit. That's some real FUD lore. I'm not sure if I'm on board with that one. FUD, for anyone who doesn't know, is as in Elmer Fudd, the guy who hunted Bugs Bunny with the shotgun. Basically, the idea is FUDs are people who appreciate tradition and the pageantry of the gun community over, well, anything modern or effective. You can usually hear FUDs talking about outdated talking points like stop and power, or discussing the merits of 9mm over 45, or vice versa, even though that argument's been almost entirely settled by the fact that almost everyone who carries a handgun carries some variation of 9mm, be it 380, 9mm proper, or derivative. All of this is to say that this was a unnecessary character shot at people who like to show off their expensive gear on social media, and I don't really think that contributes to the argument at all.
Let's look at why the military went with the M16 in the first place. The rifle is constructed of plastic and stamped metal parts. This makes it cheap and mass producible, essential if you are equipping an entire army. Of course, civilians never see this benefit. In fact, gun manufacturers rake in their biggest profits from wannabes so desperate to feel like real soldiers that they gladly pay top dollar for ARs. Second, the military wanted a weapon that was optimized for automatic suppressive fire. This high ammo use strategy was deemed critical for post-World War II infantry squad maneuvers and for pinning enemies in place so artillery or air support could destroy them. If you've never practiced live fire squad maneuvers and you don't have access to artillery or air support, score yourself a wannabe point.
So now we get to the meat and potatoes of the video, the first real argument. Before we had little commentaries, criticisms of types of people, but now we get to the first real argument. And it's bad. So, before I get to the broader problems with this argument, I do want to say that the reason civilians are interested in the AR-15 is not because they want to feel like soldiers. Some of them do. There are certain guys who enjoy feeling like they're in the military without having to wake up at 4 in the morning and eat MREs. However, for the vast majority of people, including the person in your photograph that you included in the video, they buy the AR-15 and are interested in the AR-15 because they think it's effective, because they think it is the right weapon for their situation. Now, why would they think that? Because you have argued that the AR-15 is designed for fully automatic use and for laying down suppressive fire, to be used in tangential with artillery and air support. This is wrong. Now, you argue that based on your sources that you have helpfully left in the description, which is what the U.S. military was looking for in their rifle. The U.S. military did not design the AR-15 platform. It was designed by Eugene Stoner and the Armalite Company. The AR-15 platform is a rechambering of the AR-10 platform in a mid-size caliber. The AR-15 platform was designed to use plastic and aluminum, not stamped sheet metal. The stamped sheet metal model was the AR-18. While there are stamped sheet metal parts, the vast majority of metal on the gun is aluminum, and not mentioning that it's made of aluminum kind of shows your lack of knowledge of the AR-15. It's like it's this true gimmick. Both receivers of the gun are made of aluminum. The company was called Armalite because they specialize in making ultra light weaponry, light arms. The reason why civilians are interested in the AR-15 is because it is lightweight, relatively easy to store with a collapsing stock, has a high-capacity magazine that allows for some forgiveness if their accuracy is less than great, and a rifle caliber. That is why civilians like the AR-15. It is good at a wide variety of things. An excellent example of why it is not just good with fully automatic fire, it's also good with semi-auto, is look at any competition shooting match. Look at the people scoring in the top 50 bracket of a 2 or 3 gun match. Look at the Jerry Micheliks and similar shooters of the world. Their preferred rifle is the AR-15 because it's light, it's easy to carry, it's ultra modular, and it's ultra customizable due to the massive aftermarket for it. I can buy a million different grips and a million different handguards and a million different gadgets and gizmos that might work optimally for my situation to put on my AR-15. It is possibly the rifle with the largest third-party market right now in the United States. And that makes it very appealing because any part of the rifle you don't like, you can change. So you can buy a beater $500 model AR and upgrade it over time, replacing some of the less than situationally perfect parts with parts that suit your situation better.
The military went with tiny, lightweight 22 caliber bullets. It was a difficult decision, but their big advantage was they offered controllable fire in automatic mode. Since the auto fire capability has been completely neutered on the semi-automatic AR-15, civilians never see this controllability benefit. If you've never fired a rifle in true automatic mode, score yourself a wannabe point. Automatic suppressive fire burns through ammunition, and that's another reason why the military demanded the whole weapon system be lightweight. It allowed foot soldiers to carry more rounds over long distances. Now, if you've never carried your AR in a full combat load 9 miles in one day, score another wannabe point. These choices meant they had to sacrifice long-range lethality to get that short-range automatic suppressive fire, so the M16 was only required to be effective out to 400 meters. If you haven't engaged targets at 400 meters with your AR, score another wannabe point. The military has since learned that M16 rounds are really only reliably lethal out to 200 meters. Beyond that range, they lose too much velocity and don't consistently yaw and fragment when they hit. This is the big gimmick the 5.56 round relies on. Said another way, when an AR-15 bullet slows to less than 2,500 feet per second, its wounding capability drops to about that of a 22 caliber plinking rifle. More on this problem later.
You misrepresented why the mid-size cartridge caught on. It wasn't because the military wanted sustained automatic fire. The reason why the mid-size cartridge caught on was because it was used to great effect by the Sturmgewehr AR-44 in World War II by the German side. You see, because it was a mid-weight cartridge, it was logistically easier to ship large numbers of it to the front. in a situation where America feared it might get into another lightning war with another major world power like Russia, having a lot of ammo that's very easy to move in larger quantities than previous calibers is incredibly useful. Also, ranges of when gunfights were actually occurring in the field were taken, and while it was possible for an M1 Garand or a Kar 98 carbine to hit a target at 1,000 yards hypothetically, gunfights were just not happening at that range. So why design a bullet that can fly that range? It's wasteful. Your soldiers are not going to use it in that capacity, so why design it to operate in that capacity? Now, you argue that the rifle caliber of the AR-15 is less than optimally lethal. I'm going to phrase it. I don't care. As long as it hits the guy and it creates a wound channel in where I hit him, it will be effective. We're not talking about true 22 long rifle where the wound channel is incredibly short and lacks any amount of penetration. We are talking about 5.56 NATO, otherwise known as 223 Remington, which creates a above pistol caliber wound channel. Not because of its width, but because of its energy. Now you argue, it was made for firing at 400 meters or more. No, it wasn't. That is not the range it was made for. And it was not made for shooting exclusively at that range. I don't know where you got this. That's the range the military wanted it to be able to operate at. But that requirement was applied on the rifle after it was designed. The implication that it was intended to fire with fully automatic fire is fallacious, because the AR-15 rifle was available for civilian purchase concurrently with it being put up for military contracts by Colt. I don't know where you got that understanding. The military doctrine at the time was suppressive fire in conjunction with artillery or air support. That's how the military fought, that is to be sure, and the AR-15 excels at that role. That doesn't mean that's what it was designed for. You, in this clip, have demonstrated a fundamental misunderstanding, I think, of why the AR-15 is appealing to the military and to the United States civilian populace.
There is a horrifying real-world example of the AR's non-lethality. The cowardly 2017 Las Vegas mass shooter hit 480 people with bullets fired at long range from an AR. Fortunately, 422 of those good folks survived. Looked at through the cold lens of combat effectiveness, though, that means, thank God, his AR was only lethal for 12% of targets hit. Would you trust a safety rope that failed 88% of the time?
Using the Las Vegas shooting as a data point in any kind of analysis of the AR-15 is, one, obviously deeply disgusting. Like, Jesus Christ, have you no shame? That's really gross. I struggle to take the rest of your argument seriously when you look at the horrific loss of life that was the Las Vegas shooting and go, how can I use this data to my own advantage? However, the point you're making also sucks on top of that. You're not even making a good point while you're doing this gross, disrespectful thing. The shooter at the Las Vegas shooting was, well, he was never convicted, so I guess I have to say allegedly, was allegedly an untrained, poorly equipped civilian who had no prior training on the AR platform, had never showed a particular interest in firearms before the shooting, and most notably of all was using a device that every experienced shooter I know dismisses as reducing accuracy, usability. Also, the way he was shooting people, he wasn't trying to necessarily maximize the number of kill shots. He was just trying to fire into a crowd to hurt as many people as possible for whatever sick, demented reasons he could think of. I am not comfortable talking about this, but you have made a poor argument here and it needs to be pointed out if this video were to be the least bit credible. However, I now have the requirement to take a shower after talking about a mass shooting like that.
Maybe you've convinced yourself that the AR is a great hunting rifle. If so, score yourself a wannabe point. Before the recent AR-15 fanboy craze, its cartridges were always correctly considered to be varmint rounds. If you've got a real varmint problem, okay, you can subtract one wannabe point, but only if you paid less than $500 for your AR. Still, clever marketers are now trying to sell magical deer hunting cartridges for AR-15s. Take a look at their fine print though. You'll see these miracle rounds shouldn't be used past 100 yards. At least the marketers are not yet brazen enough to claim AR rounds can take down elk, bear, and moose.
I don't necessarily disagree with this point here. The AR-15 is kind of bad for hunting. The requirements for hunting are particularly long range and a particularly large caliber to create a large wound channel that can heavily damage the internal organs of your prey of choice: moose, elk, deer, bear, what have you. And the AR-15 just isn't good at that. It's not a good hunting cartridge, in my opinion. What I disagree with is portions of his segment that are intentionally pedantic or unnecessarily rude. For instance, in this image, we see the people that he's calling tactical hunters, or what was it exactly? Tactical hunters. Those guys aren't hunting. That is an image from a range day by Condor Tactical. They were at a shooting range on a cold day, and they were just shooting steel targets. They were showing off the Condor Tactical pants. He showed an advertisement for pants and tried to use that to misrepresent people who use the AR-15. It's hard to see things like this and not think that he is arguing in bad faith, disingenuously. I don't think this man is particularly interested in representing people who buy AR-15s fairly. But, credit where it's due, the AR-15 is not an optimal hunting rifle for large game. Medium game, however, it's a great hunting rifle. The fact that it has a 30-round magazine makes it optimal for destroying herds of wild boar in Texas and other southern states. Wild boar are an invasive species that actively destroy millions of dollars of property every single year. They are omnivores, and I mean that in the most literal way. They will eat anything. They are incredibly aggressive and violent, and they come in very large groups. Anyone from the South who has experience with boars knows what I'm talking about. They are an enormous pest, and the AR-15 has enough power to punch through its hide and kill it. And it has enough rounds in the magazine, typically, to deal with a large number of them. It is the optimal gun for hunting hogs. Oh, and showing off crappy $500 bolt guns and saying that you should buy those over or implying that you should buy those over an AR-15 is a cheap tactic, because a bolt gun can hold very few rounds and cycles very slowly. so it is not optimal for hunting the kinds of animals that a AR-15 is optimal for, like boar, like we just discussed. You're misrepresenting the usefulness of an AR-15 by claiming that I should pay no more for an AR-15 than I should a crappy bolt gun. I don't understand this argument. I don't see where it's coming from. Because if I'm looking at a herd of 30 or 40 hogs and I want to kill as many of them as possible, and I had the choice between a 5+1 bolt gun in 5.56 and a AR-15 with a 40 round extended magazine +1 in the chamber, I know which one I'm picking.
If you've convinced yourself that an AR-15 is a great home defense gun, rack up another point. The home defense scenario calls into play none of the AR-15's strengths. Its lightweight is meaningless if the farthest you have to carry it is a couple of yards down the hall.
So to respond to his first point here about the lightweight of a weapon, no, it's still pretty meaningful. It is harder to shoulder and accurately aim a heavier rifle. Now, for experienced shooters like you and I presume this is not that much of a difference, but for the inexperienced shooter who just owns an AR-15 for home defense and has maybe shot it once, if you gave him an M1 Garand, which is a particularly heavy rifle, and an AR-15, and you had him hold sights on a target using both of those rifles, he would be able to hold sights on target with the M1 Garand for a significantly shorter period of time. He would be less effective with the M1 Garand than he would with the AR-15. Its lighter weight makes aiming and firing easier.
Its 30-round magazine is ridiculous, considering the average number of rounds fired in successful civilian self-defense incidents is 2, and the most common number of shots fired is 1.
Forgive me if I use a maybe slightly cliched argument here. However, if you find yourself in a home invasion situation, you are already in a outside of average situation by itself. The majority of people do not have their homes invaded by criminals. So if you are in a situation where your home is being invaded by a criminal, you are already in a situation that's defying the odds. Who's to say you won't be in another situation that defies the odds? Who's to say that maybe your lackluster close quarters shooting ability means you need to take more than 2 shots to accurately down the target? You should have that buffer zone of additional ammunition. Now, that is not to say that weapons with significantly less ammunition in them are necessarily bad for home defense. However, the fact that it's a relatively large capacity weapon does not work against its favor. Less experienced people need more attempts to hit the bad guy. That's fairly axiomatic.
And according to the military, there's more bad news for the AR at short ranges. 85% of 5.56 bullets don't do their yaw and fragment gimmick until traveling almost 5 inches through the target's body.
So he keeps bringing up this yaw and fragment thing. What is he talking about? The reason why the military likes the 5.56 cartridge in particular is because it has a habit of tumbling inside the target and fragmenting into pieces, creating a very large wound area. So if you hit the guy, you're not necessarily creating a straight line in the guy, you're creating a rather large hole in the center of him. That's not the gimmick of the weapon, though. It's something the bullet does sometimes, but no one sits there and goes, I like the AR-15 because it yaws and fragments. Every bullet yaws and fragments to some degree if it's going through enough material. The AR-15 just does it fairly consistently. Calling it a gimmick gun because it does a thing all guns do fairly consistently is strange. If I leave in a clip of him saying gimmick gun a couple million more times, no, that is because I want you to remember this point, that because the AR-15 does something all guns do fairly consistently, he thinks that's all the gun does and it's a gimmick. I don't entirely understand that argument. And I want you to think of this poorly thought out argument every time you hear the words gimmick gun.
In the field, this means they can pass right through enemies without mortally wounding them, even when the bullet is flying at full speed. Army reports are littered with stories of our own soldiers easily surviving close-range friendly fire hits from 5.56 bullets. It takes a wannabe to trust a gimmick gun for his home defense.
So now we're seeing kind of a contradiction of points. First, he argues that the AR-15 is only good for laying down large amounts of lead in full auto fire. And then he argues that it's only good at hitting and killing targets on first hit, and it can't do that. That's the gimmick, and it can't do it. Which is a strange argument. It's a strange two arguments to have in the same video. So, it's only good for suppressive fire. The point of suppressive fire is to keep soldiers head down so they don't have time to think or react or shoot back at your guys. But it's also only good at hitting and killing in one shot, which it can't do. I don't understand how you can think both those things at once. I've already dismissed both of those arguments individually. I just wanted to point out how when you put them right next to each other, they don't exactly interact well.
If you've convinced yourself that the AR-15 is a great gun for preppers, score yourself another point. It's not a great hunting tool or a home defense tool. It's not reliably lethal at over 200 meters, and it can't be concealed. Just what is a serious prepper gonna do with a gun as limited as that? If you said, assault an enemy, score another point. First, a rational prepper would work very hard to avoid anything so stupid and dangerous. Second, why are you making enemies when you should be building alliances?
I mean, I'm no prepper, but I would assume the thing that most preppers want to do with their AR-15 is shoot a guy trying to take their shit. I don't know. That just seems like me. And I feel like people trying to take your shit are usually within 200 yards. It's not like it can only be used at 200 yards and it just doesn't fucking work at 199. It works. It actually works well within 350 yards, and it's only the 350 to 400 yard mark that you start to see loss. But that's a whole other point of ballistics that I don't want to get into right now. I don't entirely understand what this person thinks. That's the end of the sentence. I don't entirely understand what this person thinks. I don't understand his thought process. I don't understand what he thinks of other people's thought process, to where his straw man argument of a prepper defending an AR-15 is so I can assault an enemy position. No, it's so that he can return fire when other people are using the same rifle to kill him and take his shit. Let's be honest with ourselves, the AR-15 is the most popular weapon in the United States right now. If you're going to be attacked by a raider, they're going to have an AR-15 too. So abandoning a rifle that can return fire at the same range is a strange choice to me. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And I'd like to see his opinion of what a good prepper gun is, which he has a totally different video on that I might do a response to if I like how this video came out, because I know it isn't going to get any fucking views.
Finally, we come to the AR-15 militia boys, the biggest fools of the bunch. If you plan to use your AR-15 to fight all enemies, foreign and domestic, score yourself a big wannabe point. The first problem with choosing an AR for militia action is that you're trying to play an automatic fire game with a semi-automatic gun. In addition to auto-fire rifles, grenades, and heavy weapons, all modern armies also carry belt-fed machine guns. If you've never maneuvered under direct automatic fire, score another point. I know not many civilians get a chance to do this, so here's a quick alternative test. If you've ever lost your shit when a bee comes near, there is no way you will keep it together under suppressive machine gun fire.
I guess people with bee allergies just don't cut it in the military, huh? That was a weird analogy to make, and that kind of really contributes to the boomer tone of this entire video. However, I will respond to the actual argument that just using a rifle is not sufficient when combating people with fully automatic weapons, artillery support, mortar support, and air support. That's why the Taliban, ISIS, the IRA, the Viet Cong, and every single other guerrilla army was defeated instantaneously in 5 minutes by the larger, more well-equipped force. And that is why in Sun Tzu's The Art of War, he says, don't do guerrilla tactics, lol. Right? Yeah.
But the number one reason why only a wannabe would choose an AR-15 as a militia weapon is level 4 body armor. It is specifically designed to stop 5.56 rounds, and it is standard issue for all modern armies. It takes a profoundly ignorant fool to choose a weapon that can't even penetrate the armor of his enemy. If you believe you are the chosen one that can defeat level 4 body armor with your AR-15, score another wannabe point. Even the US Army is not that dumb. They are ditching the 5.56 round and the AR-15 platform. That's right, the military is done with the gimmicks, the problems, and the lack of real power.
Yeah, level 4 body armor is a real problem for anyone planning on fighting in militaries with an AR-15. However, if I was given the choice between an AR-15 with a 20-inch barrel or, I don't know, let's say an Uzi. Because the AR-15 is popular, I've trained with it, I know it, I have parts available for it, so if something breaks, I can replace it. I cannot say the same thing for an Uzi. So while they both failed to defeat level 4 body armor, the AR-15 is still the better choice. And most things are going to fail to defeat level 4 body armor. The vast majority of rifles are going to fail to defeat the level 4 body armor. We're still trying to make intermediate cartridge rifles that can beat level 4 body armor. We're kind of going back to the battle rifle design for that with the 6.5 millimeter designs that are currently in the future squad automatic weapons program in the Army. That's currently a problem just in ballistics in general. It's not really a problem with the AR-15 in particular. However, it is a valid argument that an AR-15 would struggle to defeat body armor. However, it should be noted that even if you have body armor on, you're still going to receive a significant hit to your torso, leading to loss of breath, bruising, minor wounding, and repeated hits to the torso from a 5.56 will still overcome body armor eventually. Everything has a breaking point. Any armor can be defeated eventually. Plus, black tip rounds exist. They're in relatively limited quantity, but they exist, and they kind of make this whole argument trivial.
I'm not gonna ask what your wannabe score is. The truth is, there's nothing wrong with dreaming about being a real soldier. So if you have the balls to admit you bought your AR-15 for fantasy fulfillment reasons, you have my respect.
I fucking dare you to find me a better rifle for your average American prepper than the AR-15. And your assertion that it's merely a prop and it can't do anything to anyone, it's LARPing only, is not only stupid, it contradicts arguments you've made in previous videos about caliber lethality in self-defense situations. Shut the fuck up. You don't know what you're talking about? You do, but apparently you've forgotten.
But if you still insist you bought this gimmick gun for some kind of serious purpose, All I can say is that if things ever get really real, your wannabe obsession with this neutered and obsolete costume prop is very likely to get you killed.
Overall, I would say this person fundamentally showed a misunderstanding for what the AR-15 is useful for in a military role, in a civilian role, and he basically took the words of his sources, which were one military document and a Wikipedia page, as gospel. The U.S. Army did not design the AR-15, Eugene Stoner did. It is a lightweight, efficient, effective rifle for most civilian needs. It is, in my opinion, the ideal prepper gun, and I have not been convinced to the point that it is not. I think I have defeated each and every one of these arguments pretty well just by pointing out their factual errors or errors in reasoning or contradictions with other arguments you've made. I will say that the AR-15 is starting to show its age, especially compared to the next generation of rifles that are coming out that are closer to battle rifles than true lightweight intermediate cartridge rifles like the AR-15. However, I will also say that the AR-15 is still incredibly reliable, incredibly available, incredibly effective, and it's ultra customizable to whatever task or purpose a civilian might need it for. But that's all for today, folks. Hope you had a good day. I hope you enjoyed this little dialogue about the AR-15. And I hope either of our arguments have enlightened your mind and changed your perspective. I just hope that the good points he made were the ones that changed your perspective. Not arguing that the AR-15 is only good in full auto. Thank you.